Cheech here at Fly Fish Food, and I have a very cool mouse to show you tied all out of synthetic materials. It's super easy to tie. Check it out. It's called the bubblegum mouse.
That's a big brown.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do on this fly is build the tail. Now, with mice, building a tail that won't foul is quite a challenge. And this is the latest one I've been playing with. It's kind of a cool one. It's going to use liquid fusion glue, some leech leather, and some monofilament. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this leech leather, or I'm going to put this glue on the leech leather about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way up. And can you all just give me a like for how perfect that little bead of glue is on there? Man, but I'm gonna mess it up because I'm gonna kind of blend that in and cover all of the sides. But anyway, you want to kind of leave it thick. Don't push it too far into the leather. All right, now I'm gonna let that sit and dry for 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, what we're going to do here is I'm going to test to see how sticky that is. So I have a little piece of 40-pound monofilament. You can use whatever you want. And I'm just going to lay that down about like this. And see how it's kind of lifting up off the table. That means that's ready to go. So I'm going to kind of press the mono down in there just to kind of get it started. Now you're going to lift it up with your fingers and just pinch it. So this will not want to stay on its own very well. So what I'm going to do is pinch the very end of it with this tool. Grab it like that. And then once that's in there, I can grab the rest of the leather and very easily squish it shut. Okay? So I'm going to hold that for a while, and you can see the monofilament stops, but I glued it all the way to here. So the monofilament under the leather will add very rigid support. It will keep it from fouling, and then having it glued together with no monofilament will add a little bit more wiggliness, and then obviously the leather with no glue on it will move the most. But the idea is I'm going to hold this here with my fingers. It might take a few minutes until I feel comfortable, and then I'm going to move this clamp off the end of it and put it over the whole thing and then set it aside. Let's see, so we're getting closer. See how it just kind of wants to open up a little bit? That's fine, because I'm going to go in here like this now and just clamp that shut. Okay, let it sit there for a second, and I'll just move that up just a little bit right there. So I have that clamped down exactly how I want it, and I'm maybe going to trim this off a little bit right there. And you can see now this is going to be more rigid through here, and this flaps quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it into a point to make it even move more. So as you can see, I just made that into a little point, and we're going to let that sit aside. I have one that I did earlier because this is kind of like a cooking show, and as you can see, a lot of movement on the very tip. You can see right there is where the monofilament ends, so it moves a little bit still right there, and then very rigid here on the base. But that's a simple way to build mice tails. Once you get in the groove, you can do a whole bunch of these in no time at all. And if you're more patient than I was, you'll be able to glue them a little bit easier. So this is the tail that we're going to use on that fly. We're going to get started with this mouse. I've got a B10S in the vise. This mouse is pretty cool, and it's going to be tied out of leech leather for the tail and the little legs. It's going to be tied with this super satin chenille for the body. The the foam is going to be some 3mm foam from MFC. And that's pretty much it. But it's a pretty simple mouse to tie. The tail is kind of a lot of work, but super worth it. So follow along. Once the hook's in the vise, because this fly is so lightweight, sometimes it doesn't land the best. And so to make it land perfectly every single time, we're going to put a little keel weight on this. This is just 010 wire, and I'm going to do approximately 10 or 11 wraps of lead here. And to secure this in place, I'm just going to take a little bit of super glue and put that in it. We'll let that seep in. And now I'm going to put some resin over the top of it. Just enough to kind of smooth it all out. Just to make it look, you know, all profesh and stuff. Make it look like it was tied on a purple vise. And not on a... Brig, what color is your vise?
Blacked out.
A blacked out Traveler? Okay, we're not on one of those. All right, so we have a nice little keel weight. Makes it look cute. You know, it makes it look, when you show it to your friends, like you really have thought this thing out. Because they're like, whoa, he put lead on a dry fly. We better go follow him to the river and find what he's doing. All right. Just whatever thread you like. I'm just going to use some 140 denier. Use thread strong enough to compress down some foam. Other than that, you really don't need super strong stuff. Definitely don't need GSP for this one. We're just going to give it a good base. We're going to tie some foam on this, and sometimes foam can slip. So we're going to give it a good rough base. You can notice I didn't unwind my thread. I just let it twist up. All right, so we're going to grab that tail that we just made, and I'm going to tie it in, not that far back, about right here. Okay, so I'm going to come up in front of this, and I'm going to catch this monofilament first. See how it wants to go to the side? At this point, I can tease that to directly on top of the hook shank, so that once I get here to the leather, I can just kind of bind it down and it won't slip on to one side or the other. But anyway, there's our mouse tail. You can see with varying degrees of flexibility. Now keep in mind, a mouse doesn't swim with its tail at all. It doesn't paddle back and forth. It just kind of is there. So we're giving a little bit of benefit of the doubt by giving this mouse a little, you know, paddle kicker. This is a turbo mouse, apparently. We're going to grab some gray. What color do you call this? Yeah, just plain old gray. I like it. Gray super satin chenille in 20 millimeter. And before we tie in our foam, because this will be a gurgler style mouse, we're going to tie a little clump in behind it. And I forgot to secure that mono, so we will secure the mono. Anyway, let's get on with the fly. I'll just tie on this chenille right here. You notice how I wrapped it pretty far back. The first turn is going to be as far back on that hook as you can get it without wrapping it down the bend. And then I'm just going to maybe do 3-4 turns, but with this chenille you can really preen it out of the way and make it look nice. So we'll go to about right there with the chenille, and then we're going to trim that off and pull out any of those haters and wrap them back just like that. So we have a little clump of the gray chenille, and at this point, but I've cut a piece of this leech leather. Look at that, it's just perfectly the length of the, I guess, from the hook shank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at an angle. So I'll make this cut. That's the hardest cut of this whole fly right there. You got to take that and cut it into an angle like this. So we have 2 of those pieces, and I'm going to go like this now. I'm going to cut little angled pieces. It helps to have very sharp scissors. And I'll show you what I'm cutting in these. Little mouse paws. Yes, it's very, very cute. I know. So let me cut this other one, and I already have another set pre-cut, but this really is pretty simple. It doesn't take super long to get to look nice. All right, so this had a little injury on his claw. You know, one of them kind of kicks off to the side. All right, so we're going to throw these on here, one on each side, back here. About like that long. Let's tie the other one on exactly the same length. And then we'll just wrap those forward. All right, so back legs are tied in. We need to kind of angle those down. We're gonna throw some foam in there. And the cool thing about this leech leather is it absorbs water and it really moves well, but the satin stuff doesn't. So they move really well independently one from another. We were dunking this in water trying to get it to sink, and we couldn't get it to sink. But the movement that the leech leather gives this is pretty cool. And yes, I do know that this is just a freaking pet shop mouse pattern, you know. But I'm calling it the bubblegum mouse because of this color. But rest assured, we do have, you know, the other color. The recipe is in there. So, you know, make them natural, make them, you know, pink and gray or white and pink or however you want. A mouse is a mouse. Okay, I've got some 3mm high-rise foam, and I've cut it to, I don't know, roughly the hook gap width of this B10S, maybe a little bit less. But I'm going to take that and I'm going to cut a wedge. Just like that, just to ease the tie-in. So I'm going to take my thread up to about right here, tie in that thinnest part, and then just, you don't necessarily need to pull the foam, but as you can see, I just wrap that back. It lays down nice and clean. All right, so I'm just going to cover up all this foam. We're going to get it nice and tied down. At this point, I do like to add a little bit of the old super glue in here, and that's going to really lock that down to the hook shank. All right, once we're here, we're going to tie on more of that chenille. And you notice that I'm kind of just going rough mode. This tie-in was not clean at all. I did it on purpose. I mean, sometimes when you're tying a big bulky fly like that, those little tiny minutia parts of clean fly tying don't really matter as much. So, and again, I'm going to preen this back. I'm just shook at the lack of vocabulary of my staff ass. I can't get it out of my head, dude. All right, you're going to think about this as I'm wrapping this forward. All right, let's see. We're going to go about to right here. Okay, so we're going to wrap it pretty far forward. We're going to get rid of that, and we're going to train the haters to obey where we want them to go. Maybe. And if they don't fall in line, you get them out of there. Okay, so there's a lot of things we're going to do right here at the end of this fly. There are a few more things we need to tie in, and it can get hectic. So really be aware of where your thread wraps are going at this point. Front legs go in, and I pre-made those. So sometimes the front legs are a little bit shorter. Okay, once you have those two little legs tied in, I'm going to take my foam and tie it over gurgler style, but I'm not going to pull it over tight like this, okay? We're missing out on some opportunities for material movement and more buoyancy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little crease in it back here, a little hump that goes over this little chunk of hair or chunk of fibers. So once it's here, I'm going to take this and tie it in right in front of those little legs that I tied in, okay? I'm going to redo that because my foam was not straight. Okay, let's see, now that I know I can do this, I'm going to straighten out my foam. Just, there we go. One little hater does not get the program. All right, now I'm going to tie in a little bit of a cider for this. The cider really isn't super necessary to see, but sometimes these things can ride really low. And when we threw this in water, it actually did ride pretty dang low. So I'll show you what type of cider is on there right now. This pattern might evolve, but for now, this one will work fine. What I'm doing is I've just got a piece of foam, maybe a little bit thinner than the gray, and I'm going to cut it into a triangle. Let me see if I'm fussing with this way too much. And shout out to these new Rambler scissors. These are maybe the sharpest scissors I've ever used in my life. And I've got cuts to prove it. All right, so this is what our little piece of foam looks like, except for I'm going to square up the end of it a little better. And cut little notches in it off the edges, just like that. Okay, so we have a blinged out piece of foam, and I'm going to take a lighter to the end of this one. Sometimes it makes the point of these a little bit thinner, and it makes it go through the air a little better as an indicator. So just like that, we're going to tie it in and put it about right there. Perfect. All right, so once that's in there, we just need to build up a little bit in front of the head of this mouse. Okay, so we need to jam a bunch of dubbing in a small spot, and so I want to make it super, super tight. So what I'm going to do is put on a noodle of dub kind of loose on purpose, which is weird because I just said I wanted it tight, right? We're going to build a dubbing noodle in a loop with this. All right, so I'm going to close this off and make a dual layered loop. So I have 4 lines of dubbing loop, and only one of them is dubbed. And if I twist this up, it will tighten that up really fine, but kind of fat still. So it's got a lot of bulk to it. So now if I take this and wrap it forward, and I can just push that back into that foam, and it should prop it up a little bit because that dubbing noodle is very hard. I'll just keep mashing that in there and then just finish it off at the head. That step might be a little extra, right? You can do that however you want, but that's how you can get like a really clean head on this and one that props up nicely. So I'm going to whip finish this quickly with the whip finisher that I didn't bring out here. So I'm going to hand whip this. And the reason I'm fine with the hand whip, and I just broke my thread. So anytime you break your thread, the shock of that breaking back into the knot you just tied will undo something. So what I've been doing with this head is just soaking it with super glue at this point, the whole freaking thing. Because that dubbing will kind of want to move around, and if you want it to push water, you want it to stay up. So super glue the head right behind here. All right, you can use resin or whatever you like, but now to finish this part off, I'm just going to cut it about right here, And we'll just take a little tiny bit off the edges, just like that. But anyway, that actually is not too difficult of a tie if you have everything all laid out and prepped, like the leather and everything. But you know, a mouse, this stuff is going to slim down in the water. It's going to move all around. But anyway, there you have it, a 100% synthetic mouse that will swim great in the water.